Hi, everyone. How are you doing? Welcome to the Daily Bible Reading Show. I'm hanging out in Meltekeem today in the Travelodge. Yeah, you can recognize that. That's like the Travelodge colors. It's like the thing that they put on the bed. Yeah, I'm just about to turn in, and just before that, I'm going to look at Job chapter 9. So this is Job chapter 9, just a really quick one. Then Job answered and said, "Truly I know that it is so, but how can a man be in the right before God?" So this first bit, he says, "I know that it is so." He's kind of like agreeing with everything his friends are saying. He says, "I know what you're saying is true." He says, "I know that it is so." And his friend was claiming that God will not reject a blameless man. You know, that if you're right and you present your case and you're actually innocent, God will accept your innocence or accept your repentance, that kind of thing. He says, "Yep, I agree with that. That's true." But he says, how can that be? He's saying none of us can actually get to the point of actually arguing our innocence before God. Now, he's not saying that none of us can ever be innocent or sinless before God. I think there is in part that element of truth that we are all sinful before God, but in the context of what he's about to argue, he's saying there is no way that you can actually present your innocence before God, actually present your argument in like a law court before God, because you're always going to lose. So let's see how this plays out. So he says, if one wished to contend with him, so argue with God, one could not answer him once in 1,000 times. He is wise in heart and mighty in strength, who has hardened himself against him and succeeded. So meaning, again, the idea of contending with God, the idea of almost outsmarting God, it's silly. There's no way you can even come close to God's own wisdom, his own might, and no one has ever been able to do this and succeeded. And the idea is, if God has it in it for you, if God has already decided you are guilty, even if you weren't, in God's eyes, you're guilty, that's it. There's no way you could ever present an argument to disagree with God. So let's carry on, verse 5. He who removes mountains and they know it not when he overturned them in his anger, who shakes the earth out of its place and its pillars tremble. So again, just outlining God's power and might and his CV, that nothing in nature can, ever, stand up to God. The mountains, the earth, they all tremble before him. God, he who commands the sun, it does not rise, who seals up the stars. So once God shuts something as powerful as the sun, as powerful as the stars, they're done. They do not stand a chance against God, who alone stretches out the heavens, who trampled the waves of the sea, who made the Bear and the Orion, the Pleiades and the chambers of the south, who does great things beyond searching and are marvelous things beyond number. So here, normally, when you talk about nature, you talk about how God made, all the constellations and how God has power and wisdom and might over all of creation. It is usually an impetus, a call to praise God. But here is slightly different. It's slightly twisted by Job, because Job is saying, if God actually opposes nature, if God, actually is able to trample over anything that he's created in nature, how much more us? We do not stand a chance, because God, his power is infinitely greater than even the most greatest things that he has created in this world. The constellations, the seas and the heavens and the earth, that kind of thing. Verse 11, behold, he passes by me and I see him not. He moves on, but I do not perceive him. Behold, he snatches away. Who can turn him back? Who will say to him, what are you doing? So I think here is the elusiveness of God. You can't get an appointment with him. unless he stops and he makes himself available to you. And there's just no way for you to get this audience, to get this opportunity, again, to engage in this kind of conversation to defend your case before God. And indeed, if God actually does decide to do an action, snatching away, doing something that takes away maybe something from you, your blessing or your circumstance, that kind of thing, you can't even argue. You can't say, hey, God, what are you doing here? Because he just does it because he's God. Verse 13, God will not turn back his anger. Beneath him bowed the helpers of Rehab. How then can I answer him, choosing my words with him? So here again, God, has his anger against Job. And, God, he, underneath them, even the most powerful people, these helpers of Rehab is, I think, describing some kind of ancient sea monster called Rehab. And, God stands over them. How much more little old Job, Job cannot really argue with God once God has it in for him. Once God is angry with him, there's no way Job can change his mind. Though I am in the right, he says, Job, actually, I am innocent. I cannot answer him. I must appeal for mercy to my accuser. If I summoned him and he answered me, hypothetically, if God actually did, engage with Job with his petition, with his letter of complaint, actually read it, I would not believe that he was listening to my voice because it just wouldn't happen. It's just so impossible. It's kind of like trying to meet Elon Musk and trying to set up an appointment with him, trying to do a podcast interview with him. He is not going to give you the time of day. And even if he did answer you, I think, what, that's fake. It can't be. For he crushes me with the tempest and multiplies my wounds without cause. He will not let me get my breath, but fills me with bitterness. So here, God is really throwing the whole weight of his judgment, of his power against Job. This whole typhoon, it crushes Job. All the sufferings, God multiplies it. Doesn't let Job catch his breath. There's just no opportunity for Job to recover, but just fills him with dread. It's like playing tennis with, I was about to say John McEnroe, but that's a bit dated, but Roger Federer. You just get thrashed. There's just no way that you can contend with God. And that's kind of like the position that Job feels he's in. He feels that it's unfair. There's just no opportunity for him to get that audience with God in order to plead his innocence. And again, he's answering Bildad's kind of advice. If you come to God and you present your case and you're innocent, he said, no way. Who can ever get that opportunity? If God has it in you, if God already decides you're guilty, that's it. You're guilty. Nothing is going to change God's mind. Where is this? Though I am in the right, my own mouth would condemn me. Though I am blameless, he would prove me perverse. So it doesn't matter objectively whether Job is innocent or not. If if God says he is guilty, he is guilty. Doesn't matter even if he's innocent. Again, it's hypothetical, but I think Job does feel this way. Job does contend that, I don't deserve this suffering that I'm receiving, but you know what? It doesn't matter. If God says that he's guilty, even if he's innocent, he's guilty. Now, what's interesting is actually back in chapter 1, Job was called out by God as upright and blameless. Actually, God himself does call him blameless, but Job doesn't know that. Job feels as if that he is considered as perverse. And that's the thing, there can be opportunities in life where actually you are justified. You are considered by God to be innocent, but you can feel as if under the weight of suffering that you feel as if, you aren't. That somehow you are still under the weight of your sin. And there's something here about in the end, God's own assessment of us is more important even of our own conscience, even of our own situation. Okay, I better hurry. My battery is almost running out. Okay, I am blameless. I regard not myself. I loathe my life. So Job intuitively knows, actually, I think I don't deserve this suffering. It is all one, therefore I say he destroys both the blameless and the wicked, there's no distinction. All of them die. When disaster brings sudden death, he mocks at the calamity of the innocent. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covers the faces of its judges. If it is not he, who then is it? Again, talking about situations when, the wicked prosper or the wicked are judged in the same way as the innocent. In both situations, it seems unjust, it seems unfair. But you know what? All this can only happen under the supervision of God. You can't say that God slipped up or God didn't allow this. Indeed, if God is God, only God could have allowed this, well, quote unquote, evil to happen. Okay, let me finish up. My days are swifter than a runner. They flee away. They see no good. They go by like skiffs of reed, like an eagle swooping on the prey. So his life just goes by. It's almost meaningless, irrespective of all the blessing he had before. But because of just this one incident of suffering, it just renders it all meaningless. Just goes by. It has no significance. If I say I will forget my complaint, I will put off my sad face and be of good cheer, I become afraid of all my suffering, for I know you will not hold me innocent. Interesting. Speaking directly to God now. In this previous year, just talking about God in the third person, he's almost conscious that God might be hearing his words now and know that, you won't let me get away with this. Kind of like he's saying, if I tried to cheer myself up, if I tried to say, oh, you know what, it doesn't matter. As long as I know that I'm innocent, it's fine. But you know what? If God knew that, God would not let him actually have that kind of psychological, uplifting argument. Even God would cause him to still suffer inside as well as outside. It's so chum. It's so bad, so bad. Okay, let me finish up. I shall be condemned. What then shall I do and labor in vain? If I wash myself with snow and cleanse my hands with lye, yet you will plunge me into the pit, and my own clothes will abhor me. Again, interesting, he said. Now it's getting very, very personal, that how he's so conscious that God himself is the one who's like pushing him into this pit. God is the one who's causing him to be in a situation of suffering. It's become very personal for Job. For he's not a man as I am, that I might answer him, that we should come to trial together. There is no arbiter between us who might lay his hand on us both. Let him take his rod away from me, and let not dread of him terrify me. Then I will speak without fear of him, for I am not so in myself. So two things. He wishes there was someone, an arbiter, a middle person, a middleman, a friend who come between him and God, who kind of like would really lay his hand on both of them, between God, one hand on God, one hand on Job. And he says, the only way I can talk to God is someone else talks to God on my behalf. And what he wants is really just for this dread to be taken away from him. For Job to be able to speak to God without this dread or this fear or this intimidation that he feels so strongly in this situation of judgment, of pain, of suffering. And so just to recap, Job is essentially saying not just that he's suffering, but his suffering is made worse because he can't bring his innocence before God. That God somehow personally is keeping him in this stuck situation of this frustrating conundrum of not being able to find out why he's suffering, much less argue his innocence, that he does not deserve this suffering. And really what he wishes would happen is someone would come between him and God, remove this kind of dread and this kind of intimidation, and actually almost talk to God on his behalf. Pointing forward to what something that we Christians have, we take for granted. We have Jesus, and we can come to Jesus. Jesus is the one who stands between us and God, but not only speaks to God on behalf, but takes our dread upon himself, so that he brings us directly to God. So this dread that he wishes take away, actually Jesus experiences this on our behalf. In a way, everything that Job feels here that sometimes we might be tempted to feel as well, Jesus, of all people, understands it. He takes it from our shoulders and really puts our hand on ours and reassures us that he knows what we're going through. He speaks to God as our arbiter, as our mediator, as our middleman on our behalf. He is on our side. Okay, all right, so that's Job chapter 9. I'm going to sleep. Take care. God bless. And yeah, see you tomorrow.